to the second episode of the Going for Two podcast. My name is David Adams.
And I'm Cole Weinstein, and we have a really exciting show for you tonight. The Super Bowl tomorrow, and we're really excited for that. We're going to talk a lot of things football tonight. It's going to be a lot of fun, and let's get right on to it.
Yep.
So first off, the awards. What should we talk about first?
I think we should go with the comeback player of the year, Cole.
Definitely. So who do you think should win, and who do you think will win?
I think that Carson Palmer should win, and I'll tell you why. Carson Palmer came back from an ACL tear last year, was horrible. Cardinals flopped in playoffs without him. He came back to have one of his best statistical seasons at QB ever in his career. He threw for 35 touchdowns against 11 interceptions, over 4,500 yards. He just had an incredible season, and it's amplified by the fact that he had an ACL tear last year. Who will win is Eric Berry. He has a great story. He came back from cancer last year, had 2 interceptions, had 55 total tackles, 12 passes defended. And I'm not saying Eric Berry does not deserve the award. He's a great player, and I think his story is one of the most inspirational ones in the NFL that we had maybe ever. But Carson Palmer was better from a statistical standpoint, and I think that's why he should win. Cole?
Yeah, and I'm sort of looking at this from the same point of view also, but I'm picking a different answer. My big thing is I did really struggle because I wanted to pick Eric Berry, but I think just really looking at it, I have to go with Navarro Bowman. And that's because Navarro Bowman led the league in both combined tackles and total tackles. He was the best tackling-wise in the NFL this year. And what a lot of people forget is he came off of arguably the worst knee injury in NFL history. He actually missed 2 full seasons because of it. It was an awful knee injury, and he came back, and he was amazing. He led the league in tackles, and from that point of view, I would argue he was the best middle linebacker and one of the best defensive players in the league, and I would argue that just because of that, he came back from something that was also really harsh, and he played so well with that. But on the other side, I get it. Eric Berry did come back from this really tough thing of cancer.
Yeah, and it's not like either of us is going to be, up in arms about it. Eric Berry wins.
And it's not like he had a bad season. He had a very good season.
Yeah, he was a Pro Bowler, wasn't he?
Pro Bowler, and I think named All-Pro.
Yeah. If he wins it, I'm not going to have any misgivings. But in my mind, Carson Palmer, and in your mind, Navarro Bowman had better statistical seasons.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. Let's go to the next one.
Okay, Defensive Rookie of the Year. It's pretty unanimous on this one. Marcus Peters, great season, 8 interceptions, 2 touchdowns, and he was a value part of a stingy Chiefs defense that was rated one of the best in the country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, my big thing about this is that he led the league, or he was tied for the most interceptions in the league, 8. That's really impressive as a rookie. There are Hall of Fame players who never have 8 interceptions in a year. 8 interceptions is amazing, and to have that in your rookie year, it's pretty amazing.
Can we talk about the fact that his first play from scrimmage was an interception?
That's ridiculous.
I don't know. That plug and play. Okay, let's move on. AP Offensive Rookie of the Year. Who should win?
I think Todd Gurley, just simply because he was 3rd in rushing yards and 5th in rushing TDs, and he was a top 5 back this year. And I don't think you can say any other rookie was a top 5 player at their position. I think probably who's going to win is Jameis, and Jameis had a really good season. And as a quarterback, that's a really valuable thing, and he's going to serve Tampa for many years to come, but he was not a top 5 quarterback this year. So that's why I would argue that Todd Gurley deserves it, because Todd Gurley was so talented, and he played so well this year coming off an ACL surgery. And these numbers that he had that were great, he still missed 3 games this year, and the first game he came back from, he didn't really get that many carries.
Todd Gurley, you got to give it up for him. He was phenomenal this year. Whenever you're 3rd in yards, behind Doug Martin and Adrian Peterson, who already established himself as pretty good players.
They've been in this game for a long time.
Yeah, and then when you have a rookie that's 3rd, that's just amazing. However, I'm gonna go with Amari Cooper. Over 1,000 yards receiving, 72 receptions, 6 touchdowns. I think he was the main offensive threat for Oakland. Yeah, they had Latavius Murray, and yeah, they had Derek Carr, but he really cemented himself in that offense. And he established himself as a good to a great starting NFL wide receiver in his first year. So that's why I'm going to go with Amari Cooper.
Yeah, no, I can totally see that. I guess the reason why I picked Gurley over him, and obviously it wasn't by much. All those three guys were all in my top tier
Yeah, you
of
had a
offensive.
really strong top of the rookie class this year.
But it's just like Gurley had 1,106 yards rushing and 10 rushing TDs. That's really impressive. Not only is a rookie, not only is a guy coming off an ACL surgery, but like there's just he did all of that. So much was stacked against him, and he came out and he proved himself to be a top 5 player or a top 5 running back this year.
If Todd Gurley, he could be comeback player of the year too. But
that's a good point.
In college, he tore that ACL, and people were wondering, is he going to be the same? And he stepped into this NFL offense, and he really proved that he was going to be the same player than he was in college. Arguably, even better.
Yeah, that's a really good point. On to the next one, I guess.
Yeah, Defensive Player of the Year. Again, unanimous pick, J.J. Watt. 17.5 sacks, 76 combined tackles, and 57 total tackles. He was just a beast. He's been a beast for the last 2-3 years, and I don't think it would surprise anyone if he was picked at the NFL honor ceremony to be the Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, I guess my big thing was for me. I was debating between him or Navarro Bowman, and I guess what I really came down to pick J.J. Watt is that J.J. Watt carried, unlike he has done before, he kind of carried this team this year because that Houston Texans only made the playoffs because of how great that defense was down the stretch, and that was led by him. The reason why Whitney Mercilus was top 10 in sacks was because he got all those double teams. He was making the guys around him better, and that defense was really showing. In past years, it was really just J.J. Watt was having great games instead of the whole defense, but for whatever reason this year, he's making that defense better because of him instead of just making himself better, which is especially why I picked him over Navarro and why I think this has been one of his better years, even though statistically he might have had lower sacks. I think he made the defense better, which is why I like him more.
Also led his team to the playoffs, which is a huge plus. He didn't do it last year. He did this year without, may I add, any sort of resemblance of a good quarterback under center.
Well, and their running back got hurt. Arian Foster was hurt. If Arian Foster was in,
come on, Alfred Blue, you don't think he can be the bell cow?
Yeah, no, not really. Trust me, nothing against Alfred Blue. He's probably a very nice guy. He's made some good plays in the NFL, but he's no Arian Foster. And same thing, Hoyer had decent play at points in this season, but he was hurt. He was getting switched out with Ryan Mallett. If he was able to just play consistently, I think that team could have been a lot better, and that's because J.J. Watt was leading that team.
Okay, Offensive Player of the Year. You said Antonio Brown. You want to tell us why?
Yeah, definitely. I picked Antonio Brown just simply because Ben was hurt a lot this year, and especially, obviously, it looked like his numbers dropped when Ben was hurt, and that's because he didn't have a quarterback to get him the ball. As a wide receiver, you can't get the ball if no one's throwing it to you. The reason why Amari Cooper was successful was because he had Derek Carr. If you put him in Cleveland where Johnny Manziel was throwing him the ball or someone else who was struggling, he might have not had as great of a season. So obviously when you don't have as good of quarterback play, you're not going to get the ball as much. But when a struggling, hurt Ben Roethlisberger came in and he was not 100%.
Struggling. I don't think he was struggling at all. He had great stats. He spread the ball around. But yeah, I definitely think
he was hurting though, and Antonio Brown helped that. And Antonio Brown really helped to carry that team in a lot of moments. Obviously, there was a time when his stats fell down, but when Ben came back and Ben was not 100%, he was able to help Ben play better, and he was able to put more attention on him. So guys like Martavis Bryant could have had bigger games. So that way there would be less guys in the box for, Le'Veon Bell or D'Angelo Williams or whoever was running the ball because there were a lot of injuries there. I really like that pick because I really feel like he helped out that team a lot. And obviously, who I think is probably going to win is Cam Newton. And while I agree he was technically the best offensive player, I think the person who's the MVP shouldn't also get offensive player because you want to spread the awards around. You want to give it to different guys. Obviously, the best offensive guy or the MVP who's on offense is also going to be the best offensive guy. How do you feel?
I'm going to go with Adrian Peterson on this one. He carried the offense for most of the season. Drew some criticism around it. Some people said that Teddy Bridgewater should have been able to pass the ball more. But Teddy Bridgewater didn't have the greatest season this year. Adrian Peterson is the reason why that offense was able to generate enough points to get into the postseason. He led the league in rushing yards with 1,485 yards and also put up 11 touchdowns. Both of those are either first or tied for first. Who I think will win is Russell Wilson. Had a great season, especially towards the end. Towards the beginning, the offense was kind of stagnant, but as the season progressed, he really turned it up. And I think that's why he'll win the Offensive Player of the Year award.
To be fair to Teddy Bridgewater, yes, he did not have the greatest season. He only had 14 passing touchdowns to 9 interceptions. But he was named to Pro Bowler this year, and he did not have a horrible season. So, yes, AP did help to carry that team, but I would argue he definitely got help from Teddy. But at the same time, it's not a bad pick. Adrian Peterson was on my list, too. I definitely was debating between picking him also.
Okay, AP Coach of the Year. Again, another unanimous decision. Ron Rivera turned his team around from a 7-9 record last year. Even though they made the playoffs, it seemed more of a fluke, didn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Than a team that really deserved to be in the playoffs. He led them from that record to a 15-1 regular season record, which is just amazing. 15-1. A lot of teams would kill for that record.
I completely agree with that. That team played so good around him, and they wouldn't have played that well without those schemes, because that was a complicated scheme team, and he was able to make that team better through his coaching, and he did a lot of really good things. And Carolina's really turned around with him. And I know he doesn't get a lot of credit, but that team's made the playoffs for the past 3 years. Like, I know we always forget about that, but they went 7-8-1 last year, made the playoffs in a weak division. But then the year before that, they went 12-4. I think he's a really underrated coach who's finally going to get his respect tonight when he wins.
And you know what? I'm going to throw a name out there, honorable mention. This doesn't take away anything from him. He had a great season. But Bruce Arians.
Okay.
Great coach. And he had Arizona take that next step. They're not quite there yet to be a Super Bowl caliber team, but they took that next step this season, which will eventually lead them to a Super Bowl.
I agree with that, but I think Arians would be third on my list. I would give it to Andy Reid second, just because of that 10-game win streak and how he was able to turn that team around. A team that was really just mentally not there at the beginning of the season, and he was really able to turn that team around and get them on that 10-game win streak. A win streak that I want to say is one of the best in the NFL. Obviously, the Carolina Panthers had a massive win streak that was bigger, which is why I would give the vote to Ron Rivera. But second win streak-wise, I'm pretty sure it was him. I know the Cardinals had a 9-game win streak, which was still really good. But just what he was able to do emotionally with that team, I really liked Andy Reid. Obviously, we both like Andy Reid and we both like Bruce Arians, but I guess that's just how I feel personally.
But we both agree Ron Rivera deserves it, and he's going to win tonight.
Well, and Arians and Reid are both also great coaches.
Okay, so now the moment of truth, as it were. Most valuable player.
I think everyone and their grandmother has the same answer.
Cam Newton.
Cam Newton.
Woo! Led his team to a 15-1 record and a Super Bowl. 45 total touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 3,837 passing yards, over 600 rushing yards. He was kind of do it all, and he really led that offense, because at the beginning of the season there was a lot of uncertainty between Calvin Benjamin being out. Not knowing if Jonathan Stewart was really going to step up to the plate.
And they were a 7-8 team that made the playoffs. Everyone thought, they didn't really deserve it. They were a fluke. They got in because of a weak division. If they were in the NFC West, there's no way they would have made it. If they were in the NFC, East, there's no way they would have made it. So, people just didn't believe in them. And for whatever reason, well, we know the reason, Cam led that team. He carried that team. And I look at most valuable player, and just the word valuable really sticks out, because Cam Newton was such a value to that team, not only because of what he did statistically wise, but because he gave that team swagger. And that defense would not have played as well if Cam was not leading that team and giving them the swagger, because they played so loosely and so well because of how he led that team.
It also helps that Cam Newton was getting done things on his side of the ball, let the defense do their thing on their side.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Well, and everyone around him played better because they were so inspired by what he was doing and how he was playing. And it was just, he made that team better because of how he played and his attitude. So he was not only the best player, but he was the most valuable player.
Okay, well, those are the awards. If we, yeah,
The
so
Hall
we're
of Fame
just
is
gonna
next.
move on. Hall of Fame. It's gonna be announced tonight, right?
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about it. Who are your or who would you put in your Hall of Fame class this year?
Well, I'm gonna start out with Brett Favre, Tony Dungy, Marvin Harrison, Terrell Owens, and Kevin Green.
Okay. My list is a little different from yours. I'm going Brett Favre, Terrell Owens, Kevin Green, John Lynch, and Don Coryell. Um, we have three of the same: Favre, Terrell Owens, and Kevin Green. Let's just talk about them really fast. Which one do you want to start out with first?
Let's talk about Favre.
Sure.
What more can you say about Favre? But he had a great and long career under center. He won a Super Bowl. He had that crazy streak where he started for how many games? 297?
297. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it shows the toughness that he had. And fun fact, on the 113th try, as a starter, he broke the record for most consecutive games started against the Chicago Bears, which that's got to be sweet being a Packer.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just he was just so consistent. And it wasn't that, he'd have an off year and then he'd get back into it. This dude won 3 straight MVPs. Favre he embodied football for 20 years. And he was so fun, and he was never hurt, and he
The
was always
gunslinger.
yeah, and he was always great. And yes, he would throw picks sometimes, but the thing that I always loved about Favre was that whenever it needed to happen, he would drive his team down the field and they would win. He was so clutch, and I don't think enough people realize how clutch he was and talk about that because he had so many great clutch plays and he was so unorthodox and he made the game so fun and enjoyable. And it's been a pleasure to watch Favre when he was playing. And I think he embodies the idea of a Hall of Famer.
Held a lot of records too.
Yeah, definitely.
Most completions, most attempts. He held the touchdown record for a long time before Peyton Manning took up and took that record.
Yeah, Peyton's breaking a lot of his records now, but that does not take away from how impressive those records were.
And he still has a chance to walk away from this season as the all-time leader in wins still because Peyton Manning is tied with him, but it's not a guarantee that he's going to win on Sunday. But
yeah, definitely.
We're going to talk about that later.
Yeah, and then next on Terrell Owens, just
a beast at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, and I know that a lot of people thought of him as this loudmouth or whatever, but he had his moments where he was loud and boisterous, but he always backed it up. Statistically, he was so impressive, and it was just like what he did was so impressive. In 219 games, he had 1,078 catches, 15,934 receiving yards. He averaged 72.8 yards a game, and he had 153 total TDs, which is third all time.
Wow, that's crazy. He's definitely a Hall of Famer. But he might not get it this year though.
Yeah,
he might not get a Hall of Fame nod this year.
He definitely might not, and I think
I think that really speaks to how many great players we have in this class.
Definitely, and I think also that because so many people were sort of irked by how he played the game, and a lot of the people who are voting for the Hall of Fame are these older sports writers. A lot of people probably didn't like his sort of celebration and his way of playing the game, which I hope he does get in because he really deserves it. And I don't want to have, a Chris Carter situation where a guy who was, maybe a little bit louder, who still backed up his play, doesn't get in because people think that he doesn't deserve it or he wasn't humble enough. But his stats speak for himself. Terrell Owens was a beast. And Terrell Owens was such a great player, and he deserves to get the highest honor in football, which is to be a Hall of Fame. To me, he's a Hall of Famer. To me, he's probably a top 3. Yeah, to me, he's a top 3 wide receiver of all time. The only other wide receivers I would put maybe ahead of him are Randy Moss and Jerry Rice. Maybe a few others, but not very many.
Okay.
He was great. And then our last guy, Kevin Green. You want to talk about Kevin?
160 sacks, third all time. And what really stands out to me, 12th year of eligibility to go into the
That's
Hall of Fame.
ridiculous. I'm going to name some of the guys who have less sacks than him. Michael Strahan, who was a second ballot Hall of Famer. Jason Taylor, John Randall, Jared Allen. Lawrence Taylor, the greatest defensive player of all time, has less sacks than Kevin Green. Derek Thomas, another great player. And Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis, two guys who are getting towards the end of their career who are both still great. There are so many great guys who have less sacks than Kevin Green, but for whatever reason, people don't remember Kevin Green and how great he was. He was such a great sack
He
artist.
needs to be in this class, or else I don't know what they're doing.
Sadly, I don't think so, because it's been 12 years. Hopefully he gets in eventually, but he deserves it. But he's just one of those guys that for whatever reason, the sports writers, they don't see why he deserves to be in, or some new guy pops up every year that they'd rather have be a Hall of Famer. And it's frustrating because there's a guy like Kevin Green who really deserves it.
Okay, well, now we're gonna talk about players that maybe we don't agree on.
Yeah, so you said Tony Dungy and Marvin Harrison, and I said John Lynch and Don Coryell.
And they're all great players. If I could put all of them in, I would.
Yeah.
But we decided to put on a max of 5.
Yeah.
Just to be safe.
Because honestly, only 6 guys get in, and that's very rare. Most of the time, it's 5 guys.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna start off with Tony Dungy.
Sure.
I know you have some misgivings about him. Why don't you say him?
Here's my thing about Dungy, is that, yes, Dungy was great, but I think that he did only win 1 Super Bowl, so it's not like
He won one Super Bowl as a player?
Yeah, that's true, but we're talking about him as a coach, and I'm pretty sure I believe he was a backup when he was a player.
The year that he won it, he actually led the team in interceptions, but...
Oh, wow, he did? Never mind. That's really impressive.
Yeah.
But I'm judging him as a coach at this point. He was probably a very good player,
fair.
and he deserves to make it. But my thing about Dungy is that he only won 1 Super Bowl, so it's not like he is screaming to be like he needs to be in the Hall of Fame at this very moment. You know, the thing that I always remember is the team, maybe the greatest team that was ever coached by him or wasn't coached by him, was the 2002 Buccaneers that he had gotten fired from, and then they won a Super Bowl. So after he had left...
I don't think that's fair, though. I don't think that's fair, but go on.
I get that, but my point is that I have nothing wrong with him, but there is nothing about him that shines more than Coryell and John Lynch. And I just want to take a second to talk about John Lynch.
Whoa. You're just going to skip over my guy, Tony Dungy? Come on, you're just going to bag on him and just going to...
I already gave you my answer. I think Tony Dungy's very good. I think he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame.
But you haven't set 139-69 win-loss record in the NFL.
No, that's really impressive.
Overall record, he had 148-79. He missed the playoffs but he didn't miss the playoffs except 1 season at Tampa Bay. As the Indianapolis Colts head coach, went to the playoffs every single year. Do you know how impressive that is? He was a Super Bowl champion. He's an AFC champion. He was named to the NFL 2000's All-Decade team, and he's a part of the Indianapolis Colts Ring of Honor. He was a great coach, and he deserves to be in this class.
I definitely think he's good, but I want to see where he compares against, all-time winningest coaches, because I think that there's a lot of coaches. What was the number again? And he probably has, he's 19th all-time. And yes, don't get me wrong, there is nothing wrong with 19th, and he was a very good coach, but I just think that there are guys who command to be in the Hall of Fame more than him.
I want to read you off this. Okay, so when he was hired by Indianapolis in 2002 to the time he left in 2008. Second, AFC South. Then first, and then in 2008 was second.
Well,
That's amazing.
He had Peyton Manning.
But okay, every coach has a great quarterback.
Definitely. Well, and that's my point.
Your guy, Don Coryell, had
Dan Fouts. Definitely.
And he had Kellen Winslow. Come on, everyone has great players, but it's how you use them. No. And I think he definitely deserves to be in, and I think he should be in this year.
I think here's the thing, and just comparatively, I'm going to talk about why I put Coryell in over Dungy, and that's because, for me, Yes, while Dungy did have more wins, Coryell changed the game. He changed the way that people deal with the passing game with Eric Coryell in that offense. And I think that alone deserves to be commended, and he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame for that. And not only that, he was a really good coach. He had some really great teams. He had that Charger team.
Never
that
won a Super Bowl.
I would agree with that. He didn't win a Super Bowl. But my thing is that the Hall of Fame is for game changers. And I'm once again, this is me. No, I'm not saying that Tony Dungy does not belong, but I'm saying Coryell deserves it first. I'm saying of the two, I would put him in first simply because Coryell changed the game. He changed the way that we pass. Honestly, I'm pretty sure Dungy wouldn't have had those great seasons with the Colts because Peyton Manning used a lot of Coryell's offense. He had a lot of that deep passing game that he had with Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne that was such a staple for that team. And the reason why, Marvin Harrison, who we're going to talk about later, was able to catch all those long bombs was because of the path that was set by the Eric Coryell offense. I think he's a game changer. He's a pioneer to this game, and I think he deserves to be recognized for that.
Okay, let's move on. I'm going to talk about Marvin Harrison. Marvin Harrison, 1,102 receptions, third all-time, 128 receiving touchdowns, fifth all-time, 14,580 receiving yards, seventh all-time. He was a Super Bowl champion, 8-time Pro Bowler, and holds the NFL receptions in a year with 143 receptions. And he also has the most consecutive seasons with 10-plus touchdowns. That screams Hall of Fame to me. Do you disagree that he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame and this year?
No, I agree. Once again, it's like Dungy. He deserves to be in the Hall, but here's my thing, is that I like to spread around who gets in, and of the two, so really it came down to me because there's only 5 guys. I like to spread it around. I don't want to put in a bunch of wide receivers or put in a bunch of quarterbacks or put in a bunch of offensive linemen or whatever. And for me, so it came down to who's going to get in, Terrell Owens or Marvin Harrison. And to me, Terrell Owens has just had the better career. Yes, Marvin Harrison has had more receptions, but Terrell Owens had more yards and a lot more touchdowns.
A lot? It's like 20 more touchdowns, and Terrell Owens played 2 more years. I would argue if Marvin Harrison played 2 more years, he would have more touchdowns than Terrell Owens.
I don't agree with that. At that point, he was getting, 5 touchdowns a year?
That was because he was hurt.
Yes, but he was still old. He was past his prime.
Okay.
He retired because he was past his prime. He retired because he was struggling. Yes, I agree. If he had 2 more years, he might have gotten, let's just pretend 10 touchdowns, and he would have had 138 touchdowns compared to Terrell Owens' 153. But my point is that
he has 138 now.
No, he has 128.
128.
And then he would have 138, which is what I was saying.
I think he would have gotten 10 touchdowns. Okay, we can agree to disagree, but I think Marvin Harrison, very comparable with Terrell Owens, but Marvin Harrison stayed with one team while Terrell Owens went all over the place. Marvin Harrison had more humility. Marvin Harrison is more of a Hall of Fame guy than Terrell Owens is, and I think that's why he's going to get in.
I think I think he would probably get in before T.O., but that's because T.O. has a reputation. But I think off my list, I'm basing it off of who is the better player.
And you think Terrell Owens was a better player than Marvin Harrison?
Yes, I think statistics prove it. And yes, you could argue he played 2 less years, but it's like he didn't play those 2 years. That's the truth, is that when you don't, yes, you could argue, oh yeah, he played less time than he did, so if he had had more time, he would have done this, but he didn't. He didn't. This is his final stats. That's like arguing, Adrian Peterson has been in the NFL for more years than I do, so he has more touchdowns than I do. If I was in the NFL, I could have scored. That's my whole point, is that, but I wasn't in the NFL. He didn't play for 2 more years. My point is stats are stats, and you have to look at...
But you don't get in the Hall of Fame based on stats alone.
No.
I agree. It's a very important part of it, but Marvin Harrison, great guy. And also, what you're forgetting, Super Bowl. That's what it comes down to.
Yes,
In most of these cases, that's what it comes down to. Marvin Harrison, 1 Super Bowl. Terrell Owens, how many?
he had 0, but Marvin Harrison had Peyton Manning his entire career. Yes, Terrell
Terrell
Owens,
Owens had a string of great quarterbacks,
he
and
had
he
some good
left them
quarterbacks.
all.
He had Steve Young towards the end of his career, so Steve Young was past his prime. He had a pretty good McNabb, and he had a young Romo. He had guys, but none of those guys are Peyton Manning.
I agree, but
If you had put Marvin Harrison in
so now we're dealing with hypotheticals. Now we're dealing with
so your
hypotheticals right now.
hypotheticals count, but mine don't. Is that what you're saying?
No, you argued that my hypothetical doesn't count, so you can't go around and say this hypothetical, if he was with a better quarterback, if he was with Peyton Manning, he would have won like 9 Super
You're right.
Bowls.
I agree with that. Then we have to agree. Then Terrell Owens had better stats, hands down. That's period.
Did have better stats. That's not what I'm arguing. I'm arguing. Okay.
My point is that I wanted to I like to spread my own. I don't want to pick a bunch of wide receivers. And of the two, I thought Terrell Owens was a better choice than Marvin Harrison. So
Super Bowl.
I would agree he has a Super Bowl. But my point is that of those, I would pick Terrell Owens over Marvin Harrison. Now let's talk about my guys. John Lynch. To me, I don't understand why people don't feel this way. Warren Sapp, first ballot Hall of Famer. Derek Brooks, first ballot Hall of Famer. Why is John Lynch not a first ballot Hall of Famer? He was just as important, if not more important, to that Tampa Bay Buccaneer defense than either of those guys. John Lynch was the hardest hitting safety in the NFL for 10 years, and he was a beast. He was what made that Buccaneers defense great. Yes, Derek Brooks helped. Yes, Warren Sapp helped. Yes, but they all worked together. But all those guys together made a great defense, and those guys are first ballot Hall of Famers. I don't understand why John Lynch wouldn't be. That just doesn't make sense to me. I think he was so talented, and he did really good. And just overall, he might have been the most talented player on that entire great Bucks defense, and that's an all-time Bucks defense. Really impressive career, and he was
Did
such
he
a
though? Picked off 26 passes in 15 years. That's less than That's less than 2 interceptions a year. He also it took him 4 years to break him to the starting safety at Tampa Bay. He wasn't even.
A lot of guys though aren't starters to start their career.
True, but okay.
Brady
I'm
wasn't.
I'm going to compare him to someone. Steve Atwater. He was
who's also a Hall of Fame finalist.
Yeah, but he's not going to go in. We both know that he's not going to be in this Hall of Fame class.
No, I would agree, but I also
So
think
why would you put Lynch in front of Atwater?
I think Lynch was a better player.
Okay. All right, let's move on then.
Okay.
So that's our Hall of Fame class.
Yeah, we each have our own.
We're gonna recap. Mine is Brett Favre, Tony Dungy, Marvin Harrison, Terrell Owens, Kevin Green, and his is Brett Favre, Terrell Owens, Kevin Green, John Lynch, and Don Coryell.
Coryell, but yes.
Okay, we're gonna move on to the Johnny Manziel story. And yes, we're sellouts because everyone is talking about it, but we're gonna go ahead and talk about it too.
Yeah, I guess my big thing about Johnny Manziel is this went from being an NFL bust to a really sad story. Johnny Manziel has a lot of issues right now, and I think right now he needs to focus on being a football player, or he needs to focus on being on getting himself better first before he can focus on football. Like, you hear just these awful things, like both Todd Marinovich and Ryan Leaf are comparing their careers to his.
And that you never want that.
And Todd Marinovich is saying that Manziel's going down the same path as he is. Todd Marinovich had some serious drug issues, and we don't know what Johnny Manziel is going through right now, but he's already been to rehab once, which we can assume was for alcohol. He's been seen drinking many times on his videos that he's posted.
Accused of abuse by his girlfriend, too.
Yeah, she actually wants to press charges at this point, Colleen Crowley. And
he threatened suicide and murder with her, according to her. We don't know what's true or not.
Obviously,
right now.
some of this, isn't confirmed. Like, we don't know if he beat her or if, he did threaten to kill himself and threaten to kill her. But she is pressing charges, so this is serious. And I think the really big thing that got me was his father, who we really haven't heard talk during a lot of this, came out and said, I truly believe if they can't get him help, he won't live to see his 24th birthday. Like, That's a father saying this about his kid.
Do you
Like,
th- yeah, that's crazy. I think.
yeah, and I think the big thing is it's like, and it's also really hard to see is it's like, yes, he even in college he was not projected to go to play well in the NFL just because of the way he played, but he still is really talented, and it's like it is sad to see that happen, and it's sad to see a guy, throw away his talent. But even more sad, it's sad to see a guy who had such a bright future in anything go down such a dark path. And I really hope he gets better, and I really hope that he can figure it out because
Our prayers are going out to him.
yeah, it's sad, and I really hope he can figure it out because any guy who sneaks into Vegas during his games and disguises himself as someone else so he can like gamble and drink, like it's just he clearly does not, whatever's going on with him is not good.
He
And
needs to take a year or two, maybe 3 years off of football. He needs to sit down and focus on
maybe he
how
never
he
goes
can
back
get
to
better.
football.
Maybe not, but I hope that's not the case. But Johnny Football, exciting guy. Everyone was hyped about him when he came out of college, and I think it'd be really sad if we never saw him in the NFL again. But I certainly think he should take a break from football.
Definitely. I really hope he comes back. I hope that he gets a lot better, or I hope he gets better just as a person. And I hope he can come back and be that player that I think everyone thought that he could be. I hope the best for Johnny. And first off, I hope he gets better. And I hope he fixes whatever happened with his girlfriend, because if he did those things, he really needs to think long and hard about himself. And he needs to apologize to her because no one deserves to be disrespected like that. And I hope everything gets I hope he figures everything out.
All right. I think we should move on.
Let's talk Super Bowl.
Let's talk Super Bowl.
Who do you think is going to win? Let's just start there.
I really want to pick the Broncos. I really do. I think it's going to be a great story. Peyton Manning playing maybe his final game in the NFL, though there is talks that the Rams might sign him. But
I think those are largely rumors the Rams are trying to get in the news. I don't know if that's really going to happen, but maybe. I think Peyton's going to want too much.
Again, I think the Broncos. I want to pick the Broncos, but I can't. I'm going to pick the Panthers because all the smart money is on the Panthers. They're over the season they were 11th total in offense, second in rushing. I think Cam Newton has this capability to nullify basically that Broncos rushing defense. And I think that he was one of the top players in the NFL, one of the top QBs in the NFL to under pressure. He had a great QBR over 100 versus pressure. And I think that's going to play a major role in who wins.
Yeah, definitely. I can see that. I'm really struck. First off, I think it's going to be a great game tomorrow. I think whoever wins will not win by a lot. And I know a lot of people think Carolina's either going to blow them out or Carolina's going to win by a touchdown. And it's really tough for me because I don't know who I think's going to win, I guess. But the big thing is that this Broncos defense is an all-time defense. Like, I'm just going to read off these numbers. They were first in they were first overall defense. They were first in passing defense, and they were third in rushing defense. And just top to bottom, this defense is stacked. And I think they're a lot better than Seattle's, and I think they're a lot better than Arizona's this year. So I think Cam is going to struggle a little bit more, and I think they're going to keep that to being a low-scoring game, which will mean that the Broncos can get back into this game.
I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. Well, not high-scoring, but I think it's going to be in the high 20s, low 30s. And I'm not really confident in Peyton Manning's ability to
think
get that
low
high.
20s. I think low 20s.
Low 20s. You think the Broncos are going to keep the Panthers in the low 20s?
I think Panthers don't score more than probably 25. At the max, they score 30. At the very max, I think they score 30. I think this defense is really, really good. I think, honestly, the score is going to be about what the AFC Championship was, around that area.
I think the big catalyst for this, I think it's going to be the Panthers defense because we're focusing on the Panthers offense versus the Denver Broncos defense. But we got to remember the Panthers defense is the real deal too. Maybe not as good as the Broncos, but they don't need to be. They don't need to be as good as the Broncos defense versus the Broncos offense. Of course, you got Peyton Manning who's ailing right now. You don't have a strong run game. You got Demaryius Thomas, but if you stick Josh Norman on him, you can really limit him. I think the Panthers defense are going to play lights out in this Super Bowl, and I think that's why they're going to prevail.
Here's the thing that really surprised me though. I was looking this up, and the Broncos offensively compared to the Panthers offensively aren't that much different. They're about as much different as the Denver defense is better than the Panthers defense. The Broncos are 16th in total offense, Panthers were 11th, okay? The Broncos were 14th in passing, 17th in rushing compared to the Panthers who were 24th in passing and 2nd in rushing. And why I'm saying
They're a
this,
rushing team though.
yeah, but why I'm saying this though is that the Broncos, their offense is not horrible, and Peyton Manning, he's still very smart, and he's not physically all gone yet. I think yes, he's very much struggled, and he should retire pretty soon, at least in my opinion, just because I don't know how much more of it he has left. But he has 2 weeks to prepare, 2 weeks to keep his body rested, and he's going to be able to really mentally figure this game out. And I think this is the first game that they're ever really going in doubting Peyton Manning, and I think that's a bad thing to do, to doubt Peyton Manning, because he still is the smartest player, in the NFL. Mentally, he still can, play that chess game, and he can still beat defenses that way. And I think the Denver offense overall is not terrible, and I think because of that they'll be able to keep up with a Panther offense that's going to be going against maybe one of the greatest defenses of all time in the Broncos.
What do you think the final score is going to be?
I'm going to go 23-21. I'm going to say Denver. I don't know why. I feel like Denver's going to win this game. I think Peyton Manning's going to ride off into the sunset. I don't know why I feel that.
I'm going to say 28-17 Panthers.
Okay.
And I think that the Panthers are going to win, but I do think the Broncos have a really good defense, and if their offense comes to play in one of the biggest games of their life and they play lights out, I think this game could get closer. I think it could get more interesting, but I'm going to, right now, picking the Panthers.
Okay. Do you think that this game will affect Peyton Manning's legacy?
No. I think it'll affect whether he retires this year or sometime in the future, though.
I think if he wins, I'm going to think differently of Peyton because he will have won the Super Bowl twice. If he loses, I won't think that much differently of Peyton Manning because, Peyton Manning's already has a 1-2 record in the Super Bowl. It's not great. If he went to 1-3, sort of same thing, that he's never been a great postseason quarterback. He's done some good things, but he's never been a great postseason quarterback. So I think, but if he wins, though, it's going to change my mind in that Peyton can make some, postseason runs, and he can lead teams to Super Bowls. And I think that might bump him up, at least for me, a little, like a spot or two on sort of my all-time quarterback list.
I think that one Super Bowl is enough. I don't think you need to win 4 or 5 Super Bowls to really cement your place among the greatest quarterbacks ever. You got to look. He holds the records in touchdown passes. He holds the record in yards. And if he wins on Sunday, he'll hold the record on wins. But even if he doesn't win, he's tied with Brett Favre for the most wins in NFL history. I don't really think it changes my opinion of him if he wins or loses tomorrow. But I think it'll affect, if he doesn't win, I think he might come back. I think he might come back to NFL to try to win. And yeah.
I think just to put to it, what you were saying is that, yes, obviously he's an all-time player for me. There's no denying that, and I think he is an all-time great quarterback. But, when you compare him to Joe Montana, when you compare him to Brady, when you compare him to Unitas, when you compare him to Aikman, it's like those guys all had a lot. Those guys all had more than one championship, and it's comparing Peyton with 2 championships. I might compare him a little bit more favorably because he has 2 versus if he has 1, because it's just proven that he's won more than once. And I think it puts him up 1 or 2 spots in that all-time. He's obviously, at least for me, probably a top 5 QB all-time for me, but that might bump him up to spot number 3, spot number 4, because he's...
Okay, here's an interesting question. Peyton Manning had never won a Super Bowl. Would he be up there in one of your greatest quarterbacks of all time?
No, I think you got to win a Super Bowl. I think that's for anyone. That's why Marino's lower for me. And that's why
Then let me ask, why is Don Corral going in your Hall of Fame class?
That's different, though. That's... Quarterbacks and coaches are completely different. And I'm looking at it because he changed the game.
Yeah.
Versus Peyton. Whereas in Peyton, yeah, and I would even argue Peyton did change.
Manning did change the game. I mean, he.
But here's the thing: I'm not saying Peyton's. I've never once. You did not ask me if Peyton hadn't won. If Peyton hadn't won a Super Bowl, would he be in the Hall of Fame? You asked me, would he be an all-time great QB?
Isn't it the same thing though?
No.
So you're saying that there's some quarterbacks in the Hall of Fame right now that are not one of the all-time greats?
In my opinion, I don't think Dan Fouts is a top 10 QB of all time. He's still a Hall of Famer.
Okay.
Are there more than 10 QBs in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah.
Then technically, does that mean can 11 QBs fit into a top 10 list?
I mean, if you have like ties.
That's my point.
Is you have like
the
10
Hall of
ties
Fame?
in first.
Yes, Peyton Manning would still be and by all-time great I mean top 10. He can still be a great Hall of Fame player and not be an all-time great. There is a big difference between those two.
So he wouldn't be in your top 10 if he hadn't won a Super Bowl.
Maybe
but
he'd be
still
maybe he'd
hold
be
the records for all of those.
No, maybe he'd be towards the bottom of the 10. He'd probably be at like 6 or 7.
Even though he had more touchdown passes than anyone in history, even if he had more passing yards in history, he'd still not crack your top 10.
He'd be where I'd put Marino. Like, I'd put Marino somewhere 7th or 8th because Marino never won the Super Bowl. That's how I look at it, is that Marino is still maybe even a top 10 QB, but I
Where's
guess
Brett
all-time
Favre on your list?
not a 5. Favre is, I haven't looked at it in a while. Favre is probably before Peyton Manning had broken all those records. He was 1 ahead of Peyton. Now he's maybe 1 behind. But that's because Favre did win the Super Bowl.
Okay. Well, I think that we should end the podcast right there.
And also, yeah.
Next week we're going to come with you for a recap of the Super Bowl. And, yeah, we'll see you then.
Yeah, definitely. It was a lot of fun talking today. Make sure to check out all the stuff in the description below. Check out the other stuff that we're playing. Follow us on Twitter. That's where we put all of our news out. Definitely check us out on our email. Check us out on everything. Thank you very much. Bye.